The sea was a second home to Lily. Her father's old fishing boat, the Mistral, had been passed down through generations, a sturdy vessel that withstood the test of time and tide. At 17, Lily was the youngest in her family to take the helm, a privilege she cherished. The ocean's vastness, its rhythmic waves, and its salty breeze were her sanctuary. One summer afternoon, under a sun that blazed fiercely, Lily decided to venture further than she ever had before. She packed some provisions, checked the weather reports, and set sail. The horizon was clear, promising a perfect day at sea. She steered the Mistral towards the open water, eager to explore the uncharted parts of the ocean that her father had often spoken about but never ventured into. Hours passed, and the coastline disappeared behind her. The water grew deeper, its color changing from a friendly turquoise to a foreboding, almost black blue. Lily's excitement mingled with a sense of unease, but she brushed it off as the thrill of adventure. The boat cut through the waves with ease, the engine humming a steady rhythm. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an orange glow over the water, a thick fog began to roll in. It came quickly, shrouding the boat in a damp, ghostly mist. The temperature dropped, and Lily pulled her jacket tighter around her. She considered turning back, but felt a strange compulsion to press on, an inexplicable pull towards the unknown. The fog grew denser, and soon, visibility was reduced to mere feet. Lily navigated carefully, her senses heightened. Then, out of the mist, she saw it, a shadowy silhouette of a ship, much larger than her own and eerily silent. It floated, abandoned and ghostly, with tattered sails hanging limp and waterlogged. Curiosity got the better of her. She brought the Mistral alongside the derelict vessel and threw a line to secure her boat. Climbing aboard the old ship, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The deck was slick with moss and algae, and an overwhelming sense of dread settled over her. Exploring further, she found the remnants of the crew's quarters, long abandoned. The walls were covered in strange, ancient symbols she couldn't decipher. As she moved deeper into the ship, the air grew colder, and an oppressive silence enveloped her. She reached the captain's cabin and pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the room was surprisingly intact. A large, ornate mirror hung on the far wall, its surface pristine and reflective despite the decay around it. Drawn to it, Lily stepped closer. Her reflection stared back at her, but there was something wrong. The image in the mirror didn't quite match her movements. It seemed to lag, just a fraction of a second behind. Her heartbeat quickened as she watched her reflection blink. Only, she hadn't blinked. Panic surged through her, and she turned to leave. But the door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The room grew darker, and the mirror began to ripple, as if its surface were water. Lily backed away, but her reflection reached out, its eyes dark and hollow. The mirror's surface bulged, and a cold hand emerged, grasping for her. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence. She tried to pry the door open, but it wouldn't budge. The hand inched closer, and a whispering voice filled the room, speaking a language she couldn't understand. Just as the hand brushed her skin, she felt a rush of icy water around her ankles. The room was flooding, the water rising rapidly. She banged on the door, desperately trying to escape, but it was no use. The water continued to rise, and the whispering grew louder, more insistent. In a final, desperate act, she closed her eyes and lunged for the mirror, shattering its surface. The room was filled with a blinding light, and she felt herself being pulled, twisted, and contorted. The world spun around her, and then everything went black. When she awoke, she was back on the Mistral, the fog lifting and the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. The derelict ship was gone, and the sea was calm. She looked around, disoriented, her heart pounding. The mirror's fragments lay around her on the deck, glinting in the early light. Lily steered the boat back home, her mind racing. She never spoke of what she had seen, but she avoided the sea for years afterward. Whenever she did venture near the water, she could hear faint whispers carried on the wind, and in the reflections on the waves, she sometimes saw dark, hollow eyes watching her, waiting for the day she would return to the depths. Lily's return to Greyport was met with a mixture of relief and concern. Her mother, worried sick after her prolonged absence, enveloped her in a tight embrace. Lily offered no explanation for her haggard appearance, the haunted look in her eyes, or the shards of glass she had found clinging to her clothes. She simply claimed exhaustion and retreated to her room, where sleep was a distant hope. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers that once filled her dreams began to seep into her waking hours. Shadows flickered at the corners of her vision, and reflections in mirrors and windows seemed to watch her with an unsettling intensity. Her friends and family noticed the change, but chalked it up to grief and stress. Only Lily knew the truth of the encounter that had shattered her sense of safety. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily found herself drawn back to the shore. She stood at the edge of the water, the salty breeze tugging at her hair, the rhythmic crash of the waves calling to her in a familiar, yet sinister, melody. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to answer the call. Determined to reclaim her life, she sought out the town's oldest resident, Mrs. Thorne. The elderly woman was known for her vast knowledge of Greyport's history and the legends that surrounded it. When Lily arrived at her quaint, sea-weathered cottage, Mrs. Thorne welcomed her with a knowing look. Over a pot of herbal tea, Lily recounted her harrowing experience. Mrs. Thorne listened intently, her lined face growing grimmer with each detail. When Lily finished, the old woman sat in silence for a moment, then stood and retrieved a worn leather book from a dusty shelf. "The sea holds many secrets," Mrs. Thorne began, flipping through the pages. "Some say it's a gateway to other realms, a place where the veil between our world and others is thin. Your encounter with that ship, it was no ordinary haunting. It's what we call a siren's lure, an ancient and malevolent force that preys on those who venture too far." She stopped at a page depicting a ship eerily similar to the one Lily had boarded. The text described the vessel as cursed, forever adrift and claiming the souls of those who crossed its path. The mirror, Mrs. Thorne explained, was a portal, a trap designed to pull victims into the siren's realm. Mrs. Thorne's eyes softened with sympathy. The curse can be broken, but it requires confronting the siren and severing the connection. You must return to the place where you encountered the ship, armed with this. She handed Lily a small vial filled with a shimmering, silvery liquid. It's a potion made from sea herbs and ancient magic. Pour it into the sea at the site, and it will weaken the siren's hold. Thanks for watching. Subscribe.